In the current moment of time, Allah is punishing Ian Garry for what he did to Neil Magny. Now, you got to think to yourself, and you're probably going to rebuttal this, but there are consequences to your actions. And for the ones that are going to rebuttal it, perhaps maybe you don't see the world from a religious point of view. Maybe you may not even believe in God at all. And if that's the case, well, that's perfectly okay, but I need you to understand that there are correlations to your actions in whatever it is that you do. You're going to be held accountable either way. Now, as somebody that believes in God, as somebody that is a God-fearing Muslim, or tries to be in the best way possible, you got to understand that even in the Quran and in biblical scriptures, they talk about, well, unfortunately, punishing the children of the evildoers. You can look back in the Quran and the Bible when they reference what had happened to the children of the Pharaoh, when the Pharaoh tried to go after the children of Israel, which was the people of Moses. And there are consequences to these things. When you go after a certain person, don't think that it's not going to come back to you, especially when that person didn't deserve it. Now, what am I talking about with Neil Magny? Did he deserve that? No, because you know what? I got to be honest with you. There's a lot of people around the world that sort of agree with Neil Magny. And here's the thing. Let's talk about the nuances when it comes to disciplining children. There's an aspect of physicality that, well, you can sort of show and say, you know what? This right here is the deterrence point. If you cross this line, these are the consequences that you're going to face. Whether that would be a little slap in the wrist, and that's saying it lightly. But there's a difference between bruising someone, and then there's a difference between actually injuring someone to a very abusive point. And there are these nuances that unfortunately a lot of people are just not ready to talk about. So did Neil Magny hurt his kid in any type of way? Well, we don't know that. And certainly we don't know what is going on in the insides of this man's life. But in the current moment of time, what is happening to Ian Garry? Well, I can tell you that what is happening to Ian Garry... Oh, look at this. They are filming the news here, right here. Hey, guys, what news are you guys from?
Oh, CBS.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I'm filming a mixed martial arts podcast.
Oh, nice.
All right. So now, where was I with Ian Garry? So speaking of the news, those are news people, CBS people, from what they had just told you. And by the way, this is one of the greatest things that you're going to expect out of the show. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know what's going to happen. But we are here. And by the way, I do this with one take, with no editing or anything like that. Like and subscribe. And let me continue on with Ian Garry. So in the news of Ian Garry, as you know, he is pulling out of the UFC 296 card as a result of having a pneumonia. And by the way, a certain strain that unfortunately came from China and made its way over here, and now it's hitting certain people. So, again, I don't want to make this about certain topics of viruses or anything like that. This is literally about Ian Garry and the punishment that has bestowed upon him. And unfortunately, his kid, got the short end of that stick. And I'm sorry to say that. And unfortunately, you know what? As a mixed martial arts commentator, you got to be able to have these sort of takes and stand firm with it. Now, do I stand firm with these takes? 100% I do. As a God-fearing Muslim, not only that, as a person that understands there is a certain level of karma that you're going to get if you go and violate or transgress towards certain people. Because it's not enough that you're already in a cage with this guy fighting for hundreds of thousands of dollars and a championship opportunity at the top level contender position at 170. Okay. On top of that, you got to bring in his low-hanging fruit comment which, by the way, is totally out of context to anything that is within real life. Now, within the fight week banter of it all, that's perfectly fine. But unfortunately, the court systems are not seeing it that way. They're not seeing it as, well, you know what, this is not just this is not just fight week banter or press conference banter, because you notice even Ian Garry was going to use that as a way to shut him up in their press conference. And then here comes Neil Magny, not really knowing what to say, not really one of the smartest guys when it comes to mic skills. Let's just call that what it is. Stumbles upon his words, doesn't really have any comeback to say about it, may not really articulate it in a way that, let's say, mic-skilled individuals such as a Conor McGregor or a Chael Sonnen can come up with in a rapid speed. I mean, it just doesn't look good. Now here he is, in a situation fighting for his kids' custody battles. And once again, I don't want to make this into a red pill argument because of all the things that a lot of people online are saying that a lot of men are going through nowadays, right? With being able to, I guess, unfortunately not win any custody battles, being in positions where they're not in, let's say, control of their kids, based on disciplining issues that the government will try to supposedly interfere with in some kind of way because, you know, there's CPS situations, or just losing a court case like this where he is in a divorce battle and now is in a custody battle with his ex. So it must be really tough for him to go through that. But once again, from a religious standpoint, nothing goes unpunished. And now this cost Ian Garry millions of dollars, and you may not see it right now. Maybe in the long run, he's going to make even more millions of dollars if, let's say, he becomes double champion, which he has a great opportunity to. He's got two opponents ahead that could literally catapult him in that particular direction. Leon Edwards, if he does happen to win this weekend at UFC 296, or perhaps Sean Strickland, if he continues to stay there and win his fight against Dricus in the upcoming pay-per-view in UFC 297, I believe, which is coming up soon in January, in the new year, in the new season of the UFC's calendar schedule. So he's got all those things to look forward to. But unfortunately, this fight with Luque would have catapulted him in a different stratosphere. For example, today is supposed to be the press conference. He could easily have gone into that press conference and told the world his side of the story. Now, what is the side of the story in Ian Garry? Well, for him, he's being called some of the most vile things that I don't even want to repeat, and you guys know what it is. This isn't the kind of channel to sensationalize what people do in their bedrooms and whatnot, right? This is not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to entertain that type of talk, but you know what it is. So they're making him look like less of a man because of reasonable apparent actions that you see unfolding in his personal life, which is what? He has a personal trainer that lives with them who happens to be the ex-husband of his current wife and the mother of his kids. Well, okay, he has one kid with her and then the other kids are with this ex-husband, but they live together. Now, is there some strangeness that goes into that? Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have a little bit of a conservative point of view in the way that you live your life. I know I certainly would not be keen to living that kind of lifestyle at all. But Ian Garry is. And because of that, he's being made to look if you really want to twist it in a different setting, okay, maybe, did anybody ever stop and think that the ex-husband maybe is the one that's less of the man in this situation? I mean, he's not the one who's the famous pro-young athlete, okay? He's not the one who's the ex-husband. I'm sorry, he is the ex-husband, but he's not the current husband as Ian Garry. So you could look at it that way. And again, it's all about your own perception and how you view the world. I'm not here to dictate one way or another which is better for who or for what. I just know what I would live by. I know what most of you would live by. I know what some would live by. And that's just what it is. Ian Garry lives by this and he's okay with it. And there's multiple ways of looking at it. But you got to understand that he went out there, not only humiliated Jeff Neal by putting his business out there, because you know what it is. If you're a hardcore fan, which most of you are that are watching this, you know exactly what I'm saying. What happened with Jeff Neal, right? He was arrested. He was incarcerated. There's a mugshot out with him. And then before they were going to fight, and one thing led to another, opponent switch, injuries and whatnot. This guy went and took a shirt of Jeff Neal in his mugshot and tried to sell it to people around the world. This is Ian Garry. This is how he wants to build his brand. That's one way of looking at it. Scumbag move, maybe fair play, part of the warfare, because you're not involving any innocent civilians, right? You're involving Jeff Neal, a person that you're going to fight, a person that you psychologically want to psych out before you fight him. And he does the same thing to Vicente Luque before this fight was canceled. What does he do? He goes out and he says that I'm going to baptize you while he was getting baptized, which again is a little bit of a religious jab at Vicente Luque, sort of deducting his religious experience at the expense of a fight promotion and at the expense of, let's just call it what it is, a psychological warfare that he wants to gain an edge of. So this is Ian Garry in a nutshell. But with Neil Magny, that right there is debatable. You see, up until this point, everything that I had mentioned about Ian Garry, his life, all of it all together, it's all debatable. Everything that he does, questionable in terms of what is ethic and what isn't in the context of the world of combat professional sports and the promotions and the marketing that has to come with it. And quite frankly, he's doing a marvelous job at that. But there are some that are questionable in terms of business practices. Is it ethical? And on top of that, he also plays that game of moral shaming in ways that he's threatening to sue MMA Guru, in ways that he's threatening to sue Sean Strickland, not understanding that all of this is fair game in this honor culture of fighting men. But if you don't lean that way and you think another different perspective in the way of Ian Garry's way of thinking, then you're going to be all right with that. You're going to be all right with involving the law, right? Which, by the way, how about this? Colby Covington would have probably been one of the biggest proponents of Ian Garry in that press conference, probably slagging him off, trash-talking him, going banter for banter. And guess what? This is the same guy that involved the law when Verdum threw a boomerang at him, funny enough, in Australia, calls the cops on George Masvidal for punching him after, by the way, he was talking about his kids even after the fight, and then goes and does, on Jorge Masvidal's part, extracurricular activities outside of competition. So again, what is moral and what is ethic? Yes, it is ethic in a sense of you don't go out and assault people under the court of law. And in the civil court of law, it is also understood that you can't go out and defame people. You can't go out and talk bad about them to the point where you slander their brand, which enably affects their day-to-day income. So you can't do that. Those are things that you're not allowed to do. But did anybody stop and think that maybe all of this is good for your brand? And that the reason for your defamation is because of the fact that, well, you feel it's going to affect your money in a negative way. But in reality, it's going to increase your pay-per-view buys based on the fact of the controversy that you bring. And again, this is the type of controversy that they want. This is not something, as a Muslim male, I would ask for myself or for my brothers. Not at all. But it's Ian Garry's life that he wants to lead. But make no mistake, you can live your life the way you wish to, and you can take the actions that you so desire. But the one thing that you have to remember is that there are consequences to everything. And those consequences, unfortunately, they will pay you back in ways that you would have never expected. So I want you to try to understand and make a choice in your mind right now. Did this pneumonia that could now potentially cost Ian Garry millions of dollars came as a result of what he did and said against Neil Magny, causing Neil Magny to possibly never see his kids again, or at least, the very least, have issues with custody battles. Depending on your own moral dilemma and what side of the fence you come from, you're going to have differing and varying opinions. But the fact remains, Ian Garry, unfortunately, and very much unfortunate for all the hardcore MMA fans, along with the casual fans that don't normally tune into the UFC, to see this card based on all this controversy that was surrounding Ian Garry. And then when that fight was going to be done, you were going to have Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett on the card, and then the list goes on of the top names that you see, Rachmaninoff and Thompson. Then you have the co-main event with the two flyweights, and then you have Colby and Leon Edwards. All of that was just an absolute dopamine dump in your head. All simultaneously working together to, lack of a better term, pleasure all your senses into this enjoyment of a Saturday night. And now Ian Garry is not part of that. It's disappointing. But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, how did we get here? And yes, it's a bold statement to say that this was a punishment from God. But it's hard to argue with that. Now, to also understand and to not end it with a doom and gloom type of vibe, let's put a positive ending to this. Ian Garry will go on to become a world champion later down in his career. He will go on to become one of the biggest superstars in mixed martial arts. And like anybody else that is blessed with a great life, he's going to continue to live his blessings and have an even better life as time goes on. But even with that and people like that, and with the blessings that you get from Allah, at some point you still have to face a test. You still have to hold accountability to the sins and the horrible actions that you've done. You still have to pay for them. That's just what you're seeing right now, in the temporary pain of things. So that's what you got to understand. He's going to go on and become a great world champion one day. But right now, this is the punishment that he got for the transgressions that he made. And by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't commit a transgression against me by not liking and subscribing. Don't forget to tell a friend, to share, like, comment. Let me know what you think on the comment section below. And I hope that you watch the entire video and this entire content and my entire catalog on this entire channel. Please do. Don't forget to like and subscribe once again. And thank you for watching till the end.